a lot going on. We have so much going on. By this time, if you've been following me on social media, you guys do know that Book Two, Ward of the State, Abort the Adoption, is out and available on all bookstore platforms. So that's Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, Amazon, everywhere that you can buy books, you can grab both of my memoirs now. My memoir of foster care and my memoir of adoption. So I really appreciate all of those who've already pre-ordered. Y'all's orders got shipped out this week. So if you've been waiting for your special edition copy and your pre-order, it is headed to you. Thank you so much for supporting me during that publication. Also, y'all, because the books are out, we are starting our book tour and we have some concrete dates. So our first stop will be Las Vegas, Nevada on March 22nd at Copper Cat Books. Shout out to Copper Cat Books. They, like, a lot of these folks have been really welcoming and made it such an easy thing to do a tour. I'm really doing it for y'all. I'm doing it for y'all because it's free, y'all. It's free. I ain't charging nobody to come. So we've made it so everybody can come for free. You can come interact. Now the books ain't gonna be free. If you want to sign a book, baby, you're gonna have to go ahead and pay that when you get there. But if you just want to come for the ambiance, for the reading, just to meet me, it is free. We will have several cities throughout the year. We will be going on book tour from March until November. So there will be plenty of cities. Right now, we have concreted, like I said, Las Vegas for March 22nd. We have Columbus, Ohio for the June 5th, I do believe. And then we are also working on some Seattle and Portland dates as well. I do believe Portland's going to be is concreted as well for May 10th. So I will have those dates on my website. I will also be making posts on social media to remind you guys. We will do maybe an Eventbrite or tickets, but they, of course, they're going to be free. We just want to see how many of y'all are going to show up, because if 500 of y'all show up, babes, we ain't got the venue for that. All right, so we were going to put a certain amount of tickets. So the tickets will be free through Eventbrite, but it's just to see how many people are coming. And then what's really cool also, guys, is every city we are going to be doing a happy hour or dinner. So I do believe in Portland we have y'all. My assistant, she's been amazing. She knows all the details. But I do believe in Portland, we're going to have a dinner after the reading at a nice location. The menu looks fantastic, and that's just a way for us to like kick back, chill, do some social media dances if we want to, just break some bread. That ain't free. You gotta pay your own meal. Okay, we ain't got it like that. Okay, but if you want to come and hang out, all of the details will be on my website www.carlosdillard.com. Let's see, any other updates? No, I think that's it, y'all. But I'm just super excited. It's not like that's it, y'all. We're doing a whole 10 to 15 city book tour. Oh, one last thing. Yes. Check out the links in my bio. There is a GoFundMe. So because it is free, y'all, it's not free for me to host these events. I'm just paying them out of pocket. So if y'all want to help fundraise to pay for these so we can make them free for the community, we are doing a GoFundMe. The links in my bio there. It's going to kind of explain what we're using the funds for air travel, hotel accommodations, and of course venues. Some of the venues have been amazing and have been allowing us to use their venue for free. And then some other ones, they're expecting table deposits and other type of venue deposits. So I do want to make sure I can keep it 100% free for you guys. And to do so, I do need y'all support. So if you got $1, $2, I think the least you can send over there is 50 cents. Send me 50 cents. Okay. Send me 50 cents. But no, those are all the announcements. And without further ado, I do want to announce the next guest, who was a former foster youth. And I'm so excited to hear her experience. Bree, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for making yourself available to share your story today. You work in the child welfare system, right?
Yes, I currently work.
Because
I've
that
been,
office is looking a whole lot like a CPS office to me.
yes.
I know a CPS office when I see one. Awesome. Well, I love when former FOSSIes go back and create real change in the systems that affected us. So let's start with your story. How did you end up in the child welfare system?
So I am originally from Georgia. So it's a generational. The foster system has been a generational problem within my family. How I ended up in the foster care system, I pretty much would like to say since I was born. Um, I never actually lived with my birth mother. She was
Mhm.
incarcerated when she gave birth to me. And I lived with my great aunt until she passed away. And at when I was 5, and then I lived with my grandmother till she passed away when I was the age of 12. So,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
so since then, I went to a family member and it didn't work out, and I ended up in foster care in my first group home. Uh, that group home was right around the corner from where I grew up, so I stayed in my community. Um, I definitely had troubles there because I was not used to the foster care system. It was just all brand new, and I had trauma with my grandmother passing and things that happened in her home, abuse that I encountered, um, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse there. So transitioning into the foster care system was very hard for me. Since my first group home, I went to a second group home that wasn't
Mhm.
as good. I was the first youth there and was mistreated, and there I learned how the foster care system really doesn't listen to our youth. As long as we get the basic needs of food, housing, that's it.
I call it three hots and a cot. That's all they're concerned about.
Yes,
Like they literally have more better policies and expectations for prisoners than they do for foster youth. Like
right,
literally, like like you can never have a prisoner sleep in like the office of the prison, but the foster youth, you can sleep in the car of your social worker. You can sleep in an office of your like. They don't really as long as they have a roof and some hot food. That's about as all they're expecting.
right. And it felt, that group home felt worse than being in prison. Like they were giving us 2-minute phone calls to our family. It just didn't feel nurturing, and I wasn't heard. Um, Once then, I stayed there for about till I was 15. Um,
Mhm.
there was talks of my father getting custody of me, but
Yeah,
he,
because that was going to be my question. It seems like from the beginning, your family has been there, right? It sounds like the elders, because everybody
yes,
keep dying, and I'm so sorry. Uh, that was a lot of death, right? But it sounds like the elders were trying to, be your safety net, and that's an issue that we see, it's specifically in the Black community too, right? Where, yeah, the elders are there, but they're old, right? And they
right.
also need support. And I don't know if your family got did your family get kinship support or any type of kinship stipends from the state while they were helping you?
No, they did not at all.
And that's usually the case, and I can guarantee that, it would have been a little bit easier for them, to give you the resources and the protections. So like what happened to your other family? Like you're saying your dad was interested in getting custody after your second stay in your second group home?
Yes, but he ended up having kidney failure and having to go to dialysis.
Jeez, girl, you
And
have not been given a good deal.
yes, and while he was sick, he took care of my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and she was sick as well. So he ended up, while I was in my second group home, passing that day. I felt something was wrong with him, and kept in constant. I was constantly in contact with him, and just that day, I felt something was wrong. And at that group home, I wasn't allowed to have a phone. I snuck a phone in while I was there, and I received the text from my brother, Dad passed away. And not to give myself away that I had a cellular device, I held on to that all night and waited till I got to school. Like I heard the news the next day. Um, so that kind of closed that avenue of me going to my father. So I ended up transitioning to another group home, and it was the best group home I've been in because I got the freedom as a teenager while I was there. And I ended up aging out at 18 while I was there. I left on my 18th birthday.
And now, before your 18th birthday, did anyone, your social worker, anyone at the facility, did they prepare you for like getting your documents together, ID, driver's license? How did that experience work for you while you were there?
I kind of had to do that on my own. 'Cause while I was in foster care for the 10 years, I had 13 case managers.
Wow.
And I ended up having to do that on my own of these are things I need. Because in my group home, they dropped me off to college on my 18th birthday. Uh,
Wow. They said,
they
gotta see you.
But they did, one thing they did do was set me up a bank account. But as far as getting all my important documents, I had to figure that, get my social security, my birth certificate, my I had to get that myself. So that definitely was an eye opener for me of, if I didn't have this drive and motivation, I would be lost. So
Mhm.
imagine all the other teenagers who don't have this.
I was just speaking to my brother. So I have an older brother. He also went through foster care. All of my siblings did. And he still to this day, like he's almost 38 and he's been very institutionalized. So from foster homes to group homes, then he ran away from group homes and like started going to prison consecutively at 18. So like now he's in his 30s. He's never lived on his own. He's never like had to fill out any of his own paperwork. And like that is something that a lot of foster youth just, for me, I was asking my husband this. I was like, I was 16, 17 doing the things that he can't do at 38. And my husband goes, because you just had drive. And it just takes a
Right.
certain person. And I see kids when I was just the last episode, the young lady, she had just aged out like 2 days before we had our interview. And she was like, Carlos, I had to get up out of there. Like I had to make and she's but then she was like, I'm using the resources that I know I'm qualified for. So I don't have to be in extended foster care. There are other programs that'll pay for my college. They just won't pay for other things, and I'll have to navigate that. But I just think that there is something about the trauma that foster youth go through. We all go through it, but then something about those of us who just like it's our nature, and that's the only way that I can explain it, because we've all been nurtured the same, which is shitty mostly, right?
Right.
So what makes it different? And it's just the nature of who you are. So
Mhm.
you turned 18, you went to college. Did you get any access to resources, college tuition, housing assistance, food stamps after you aged out?
Yes, I did. I ended up connecting with, well, it wasn't until when I first got turned 18, I did a year at a college that was close by my group home, and it wasn't a good fit. Um, but I got connected to resources to help pay for my tuition. It wasn't until I got closer to home and going to college that I can get immediate help, um, and for resources. So I ended up being a part of a program that is at a school here, um, and they work with foster youth and um, homeless youth as well. And they provide, like, because usually when you're in college and you have to leave the campus for holidays, they provide,
Yep.
like, you can stay on campus during the holidays and during the breaks. Um, they allowed me to do that because I had nowhere to go. They had clothing closet, food closets, connections to grants. So that definitely helped me with my journey of going to college and doing this all on my own. Because even though, like, I went through foster youth, foster care, youth who didn't, turning 18 and going to college is a scary
Just
thing.
it's hard just by itself, right? And
So
this is one thing that I talk about a lot, because a lot of folks say like, I want to adopt teenagers. Like I want to adopt teenagers. And I'm like, why? These kids have access to resources. Take them in, encourage them, guide them, but don't take away their resources, because a lot of people don't know, once you're legally adopted, you don't qualify for a lot of the resources.
yeah,
So when I was abandoned at 16 and I turned 18 and tried to enroll myself into college, I was like, "Why am a foster?" They're like, "No, you're not. You were adopted. We're your parents." And I'm like, "I don't know." So all of the aging out programs that my state offered, I didn't qualify for. My free college tuition, I didn't qualify for, even though in my adoption contract it did say that I did get free college as part of my adoption contract. But the caveat was I had to go to the school, the state in a school that I was adopted, which I no longer lived in that state. And then also I needed my adoption contract and my parents sign off, which I didn't have because I didn't know where they were. So when I speak to people, I'm like, I wish I had that experience of having access to those resources, because it was hard being 18 years old with no family, homeless, and knowing that there are resources, but having people tell you, no, just go call your parents, right? So
right.
if you guys are listening, really listen to what Bree is saying about, you know, foster care is difficult. I'm not going to take that away. Aging out can be difficult, but there are resources and benefits for them,
Right.
especially if you know where to look and how to look for them.
Yes, and it's so, each state has policies for DFACs, and there are so many policies. but there's so much red tape in those policies. And then the people who write these policies, they, I guarantee you, never experienced foster care. So it sounds good on paper, but for the person actually living this life, it doesn't work. Some of it doesn't
And
work.
and here's the thing, even though I do love the aging out benefits, there are policies that I don't agree with. So a policy that you have
Right.
to work full time, that's we don't. So you want me to work full time, go to school full time, uh, in this economy, and eggs are $17 a gallon. Okay, like
Yes.
$17. No, for real. Like, and then also you get disqualified if you get into any type of legal issue, which that pretty
Oh
much
gosh, that
it takes that every foster youth, like 78% of them will have some type of trouble with the law because that's what
right.
happens when you deal with trauma, right? So I'm like, so I agree with you. These people who are writing these policies don't actually know how it is. Now, if you get like a felony, like for like murder or something, cool, we probably shouldn't. But like misdemeanors or non-violent felonies, why are we saying that they no longer qualify for this help? They probably got these felonies because of the trauma they experienced in the system that you caused, right?
Right. It's so and especially um I can discuss like my role now in the welfare system. I'm currently what they call a CASA coordinator, which is a court appointed special advocate. So I supervise and train volunteers who advocate for foster youth.
Yep.
So even in my role now, we're talking about the gaps because youth aging out is like my topic that I'm really passionate about. And it's so, I see so many things with these youth, and it's like the system is setting them up for failure.
Absolutely. I applied to be a CASA, and there's also some, and once again, each state has different policies for CASA. So in our state, we had to, of course, background check. That's fine, expect it. They had us do a polygraph test, which I did
Oh,
not like because I ended up failing my polygraph test because I didn't understand the question. Because the question was, have you ever, it was, it's about child, CSA, right? Have you ever been exposed to child sexual assault? And I said yes, because I was a victim of CSA. And
oh,
then when they did my test, they said, "Oh, so you answered yes." And that made you we have questions about that. And I was like, well, I was a victim of CSA. So then they start asking me about my knowledge of revictimization. I said, yes, I'm very aware of revictimization, which is why I want to do this work. And they literally said, well, because of your past, we just don't think it'll be a good fit. We feel like you might not advocate for the children for permanency, and you will only advocate for them to go back home. I was like, well, that I would
wow.
advocate for each child individually for their own case. But then they really gave me it. But once again, it was a conference room full of white people who've never experienced foster care and adoption.
Yes.
And then my issue is I was at that point, what, 29, 30, and in my state, CASA is a volunteer position. Fine. I knew that that was about, but they expect 40 hours a week. So you
Okay.
have to work 40 hours a week. And you also have to, because we have such a big state and county, you have to drive sometimes 2 to 3 hours to a court hearing. And you have to be there, of course, to speak. And I didn't have no problem with that. But then they're having all of these, like you said, red line, like red tape, which I, when we talk about the safety of children, great, let's have some red tape. But some of this red tape does not apply to children who've already been through it, right? I understand why we
Right.
have that, but like sometimes you're literally keeping people who just want to help. And then what I saw was, I said, well, with all of these regulations, the only people that you can have in here are married white women between the age of 40 and 55 who can volunteer 45 hours a week and do it for free. Like, that's, your qualifications are way too high. They're way too high. And I also don't
Right.
think that CASA is a position that should be voluntary. I think that it's a very important position, and it should be just as important as a guardian ad litem, and y'all should get paid, and there should be a budget for it because you are doing the real work speaking for the child, right? And the fact is, if you don't pay people for these positions, who has the time to volunteer this
Right.
much time? And you're not going to get a whole lot of young people. You're not going to get a whole lot of marginalized identities because we're just barely able to survive regularly, right?
Right. So that's why, my organization, good thing you said that. We just, for my organization, got paid advocates because we know this is a
We love it.
hard
We love it.
job.
We love it.
And so, um, we're doing locally here a lot, and especially for like our youth aging out, we have a program within our CASA organization to work with our youth aging out and getting mentors and case management and for them particularly as well.
So Bree, you've talked a lot about the mechanical side of foster care and aging out. What about the trauma side? So as you were going through, aging out, college, how did you navigate like trauma? Did you go to trauma informed therapy? Like how did you navigate that?
So my younger years, they gave me counseling, but I suppressed it. Every time I talked to a counselor, I'm like, I'm fine, and I suppressed it so much. Um, and so for so long, it wasn't until actually last year that trauma started coming out of me because I've been pumping the balloon, pumping it, and now like it really burst. And I got myself back into counseling. Um, and I actually am suffer from post traumatic stress disorder. So I started noticing I am having nightmares about my past and just so many symptoms. And I was like, I need to do something about it. So I started counseling, and now I am in counseling to discuss that trauma because for so long I didn't want to talk to anybody. They offered bare minimum counseling as
Mhm.
well
And the,
while I
and
was
the
in
thing is,
care.
the thing is with counseling, because I was like you in foster care, they just shove you in rooms. They don't care who it is. It's usually some white person who just wants to just sit there and force you to say all the miserable things about your life. And I was much like you were. I'm just like, bro, I just want to turn 18. I just want to keep my head down. Like, leave me alone. But it wasn't until I discovered that there's more than just talk therapy. And I feel like, especially in the child welfare system, we focus so much on just talk therapy when like, and then it gives you a bad taste when you become an adult. And as an adult, I have found that like equine therapy does wonders for me. I love equine therapy, acupuncture therapy. If you're dealing with a lot of CPTSD or PTSD, I forget the official name, but it's eye and hand movement. It's like some type of special,
EDMR.
yes, EDMR, that like really kind of helps you go back to that moment of trauma so you can visualize it, right? So I think it's important for us as adults to say like, hey, there is an issue, but then not just keep ourselves down to like one type of therapy. Really find out what works for you,
Right.
right?
And it definitely was a journey because, like you said, like I was matched with counselors I did not relate to, I didn't vibe with. And even now, I'm like, when I talk to people about counseling, you just have to find that technique and the person you connect with. It's like shopping for shoes. You have to find the right fit, not
And
just
I think a lot of foster youth have attachment issues. So I'm the type of person like I don't like meeting a whole lot of new people. I
right.
keep the same employees, I keep the same doctors. But the thing was with therapy, you have to be like after the first meeting, if I don't feel it, so sorry, ma'am. I won't be scheduling with you
Right.
again. And you have that right. And a lot of foster youth and adoptees, they just feel like, oh, well, I just have to take. No, you don't. Find the right, like keep going. Like you said, shop for shoes, find the right fit. And that's in every type of therapy. I remember my husband and I went to couples therapy like 5 years ago, and this bitch almost got us divorced. Like there was we went for like 5 months. And then one day we both got up and we are just like, because she was an older black woman, and I thought like everything was good. And then she was like, Carlos, you need to make sure that you have your husband's food ready and take his shoes off for him. He's at the door. And it was very like 1950s centric. And I was like, no. And then I looked at my husband and she was like, and if you don't want to do that, maybe you need to leave. And I said, did you just tell me that if I don't want to serve my husband, maybe I need to leave? I looked at Christopher and I said, I think we need to leave. He goes, agreed. So we ended up
She was a
bonding.
no go.
Oh, we ended up bonding over that. I was like, let's find another therapist because I feel like she's going to end up getting us divorced. And we ended up finding a fantastic therapist. We had her for 2 years and she helped us work through a lot because a lot of folks don't know too that trauma from foster care will affect your future relationships and
Yes.
you have to unpack that. And I always tell kids, like, hey, if you've been through some trauma before you get into a serious relationship, please go to therapy. Please go to together, even if there's no problems right now. It'll just give you some tools so when problems do arise, you will already know how to
Right.
work through them.
definitely. And then like that's my big thing. That's when I started getting into relationships. It started coming out. I always thought I don't need therapy. I've dealt with it. It is what it is. I'm a survivor. I don't need it. I thought that for years until I got in relationships and it started coming out.
I literally have the word survivor tatted on my wrist because I tell people when they say like, I hate when people call us like alumni, like, oh, you're a foster alum. I'm like, I didn't go to college in foster care. I don't know why you.
It's not a glorious thing to be celebrating.
They were like, "Is you're a foster alum?" I'm like, "That's not. No, I'm a former foster youth or survivor. That's what you can call me. There's
Yeah.
nothing to be proud of, right? Through the system, surviving the system. Speaking of the system, what are some things? Because you were in it for 10 years. What are some things that you think could be improved?
Definitely the process of our youth aging out. Um, they have, I kind of hash some of that, like the red tape. That's one of my things. Another thing is keeping sibling bonds. I see so much, and I am affected by that currently. I have a brother who is in foster care.
Right now, still,
Yes. And just keeping that sibling bond. And so, because there's a lack of foster homes, you have some kids get separated.
yep,
And imagine kids they grew up most of the time together, and that separation is trauma.
yep,
And
yep.
stressing them to stay together to keep that bond. I'm not saying they have to be glued to the hip, but keeping that relationship.
So I
That
went
is,
into foster care with four siblings. The first home was the emergency foster placement. We got placed together. Then we got placed into Child Haven, which is kind of like a group home. We were placed together, but we had like separate. They had like for younger kids and the older kids, and then the boys and girls separated. After that, we were separated forever. I was 8 years old. Um, I think people don't understand how that affects your relationship. And I was raised with them up until I was like 7 or 8. We were older when we went into the foster care system. So we had really, really close sibling bonds,
mhm,
super so close sibling bonds. And losing that bond in foster care and having people say, oh, you can't see your siblings because they're a bad influence. It really does a work on your mental health. And then what a lot of people don't know is like when we do eventually end up reunifying, most of us. And as an adult, it's like meeting a stranger. There have been conversations where I've had with my brothers, and they're like, Carlos, we feel like we don't know you. But it
mhm.
feels so strange because we do know you, but you're just a different person. You're a whole, and I am. I'm an entirely different person than their 7 year old brother that they knew. I speak different. I have different likes because my life took a different path. And I also was adopted by white folks. So I have all that trauma over there.
Yeah.
And my adopted parents purposely kept my siblings away. They purposely forced me to stop
Oh,
speaking
that's
the way that I spoke. Like I would have to kneel on rice and read the dictionary. And I tell people like, "Oh, you're so articulate." I'm like, The way I speak right now was literally beaten to me." Um, it has gotten. I will say it's gotten me into rooms where I can speak to people, but at what at what cost, right?
right.
And I know the cost. But when my mom and my sister died in a car accident in 2018, and that was the first time that like we really had to acknowledge our sibling trauma, because after reunification we just kind of said, you know what, the past is the past, we're here now, we're adults, like let's just love on each other. And it worked out. Like we probably should have been going to therapy and really working, hashing that out, but we didn't because we were just happy to have
Mhm.
each other. But when my mom and my sister died, that's all because we lost both of our maternal figures at one time. So all of that trauma came out, and my brother reacted in one way, my other brother reacted another way. I That's when I also started realizing the legal process of adoption and how fucked up it is. Because when I tried to go identify their bodies, they said, "Oh no, you're not. That's not your mother." I said, "Yeah, yeah, it is." They go, "No, let me see
Okay.
that birth certificate." So I bring my birth certificate, which has my adopted parents' name on it, and they said, "Yeah, like we said, that's not your mother or your sister. Go find somebody with their name." And to have a mortician person tell you like that's not your mother just brought up so much abandonment trauma from foster care. And I was like, oh, I thought I was over this. I thought even my adoption trauma, I was like,
Mhm.
I thought after 18 and never seeing these people again, I would never even have to really acknowledge this. But now it is having permanent effects. So over the last 6 years, we've been intentionally being there for each other, intentionally supporting each other, birthdays, Christmases, and I'm doing a keynote speech for the Dave Thomas Foundation's Wendy's Wonderful Kids Conference in June, and talk about connections. I'm bringing my
Mm-hmm.
adopted brother from my wife family. He and I still are very close, and then my two biological siblings. That would be the first time in my entire life that all my siblings will be in the same room on the same stage. And that's how I'm going to end the speech, is talking about how important it is to keep family ties connected, because people don't understand it's not just us. We have generations after us. They have
Right.
children. I have nieces and nephews that need me, right? And they need our family. So we need to keep us together as much as possible, if it's safe, because when we become adults, we're going to need to know how to navigate that. So I think it's really important, for you to, like what you just said, is the keeping families together. How is your brother, older or is he younger?
He's younger. He's 19.
Okay, that's
Going.
that's an adult.
He's an adult, but he has disabilities, intellectual
Hmm.
disabilities, and
Hmm.
that's going to be my next thing. Like youth with disabilities, that's one thing that needs work. I'm his biggest advocate, um, because him being in the system, he hasn't got the resources, and I just recently signed off to be his permanent guardian.
I love
Um,
that.
so it's it's a whole ball game when it comes to that as well.
And it also, going back to what you said in the beginning, it takes a certain person to know what he qualifies for, know how to navigate that. And because you've already navigated the system for yourself, you already know, like, oh, we got to do this, we got to go fill out this paperwork, we got to go down to the courthouse for this, right?
Yes,
Not everybody knows that. Not everybody has. And then even if you do know, like, it also takes a certain amount of strength, because siblings are not, I just did kinship care with my niece. And I love her down. But the trauma, the the trauma that she experienced was so similar to the trauma that I experienced. So her responses triggered the hell, like the hell. And then I had to sit there and be trauma informed myself as an adult now, and say, hey, your feelings need to be set to the side. You can deal and cry later in the room. Let's help her right now. And then there were times where
mhm,
even I had to call in my husband, or like call in my best friend and say, hey, I'm triggered right now. Can y'all go talk to her? Make sure she's okay. I can't do it right now. And I think that that is also part of trauma informed healing, is knowing when when did you reach your level, right? And when, because once you reach that level, you're no longer trauma informed. You're no, get out of there, get out of there. And that's what, like, we need to teach parents, like adoptive parents, foster parents. It will get frustrating. It's
yes,
not going to be um a cakewalk, even if they're related to you, especially if they're related to you, because then you just have like, oh, you sound just like your daddy, like, or like,
yes,
oh, you sound just like your mama. I can't stand her, but like, I know you're not responsible for that feeling. But it's like, it's even, I find it sometimes almost harder to raise your own family than it is to raise a child that you're just trying to help, because you do have that connection, right? You do have
right.
that biological bond and that familial bond, right?
Oh yes, most definitely to speak like to that. Like my mom, she suffers from a lot of mental disorders, and she went through the foster care system and have all this trauma dealing with her. Like I went through years of because of her, I would say mistakes that she's made, um, in which I don't hold her fully accountable because it's like I said in the beginning, it's generational, and she
Yeah.
only could do what she thought best. Some things she could have changed, but some things were out of her control, especially dealing with her mental health. Um, to this day, like dealing with her, trying, you know, to raise her as well and deal with my trauma of not being upset. That's something I had to work on.
One thing that, when I reunified with my mom, I made it very clear. I said, I love you, mom. You're my mother, but we have a friend relationship. Um, I set that boundary because early on in my reunification, it felt like you just described. It felt like I was raising her. Like, I was there for her mental support. I was there for her financial support. I was there when she was sad or mad, and she would call me. And then eventually I said, no, you don't get to do this, actually, right?
Right.
You don't get to disturb my life and my peace if I want to help you, I will, but you can't expect it from me because honestly, I don't owe you anything.
Right.
Right? I thank you for bringing me into this world. You will always have my thanks for that. But everything else, ma'am, and same thing. My mom went through the foster care system. She was in the mental health care systems. Got pregnant super young, had 4 kids under 20, under 21. Like the statistics. But I had to tell her like I understand and I can empathize. But
Right.
you also that trauma is for you. That's yours to keep. And I always tell youth that I'm working with, like, it's one thing you can reunify, it's one thing to love your parent and adore them. You don't have to take on that responsibility. That's not
Exactly.
yours. That's not
And
yours to hold.
that's where my younger years I felt the guilt of, because I felt like it was my responsibility to handle her trauma plus deal with mine. And it wasn't until I got to adult I was like, this is too much for me.
Yep.
You
On
know,
top
I
of
want
bills and college and car notes and just living, like I can't do it. I can barely get through mine.
right.
Right? So
So
we're going to take a quick break, Bree. When we come back, I want you to explain more about how you process this trauma, your relationships with your biological family now, and some things that you would do to change the system for the future of foster youth. So we'll take a quick break, light shiners, and we'll be right back. Awesome. Do you need to go to the bathroom or anything?
no, I'm fine. I
No?
was like, let me before I started, I was like, let me take the